Hello, my friend.
Hi, Elizabeth. So while the social isolation period has become a prolonged journey, people in many organizations have an increasing need to maintain an emotional balance in their daily relationships and activities. And there is substantial research indicating that those with higher emotional intelligence capabilities will have an easier time in maintaining that emotional balance. There cannot be a better time for us to explore wisdom of emotional intelligence. And I cannot think of a better guest for that purpose better than Professor Marc Brackett, the founding director of Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and a professor in the Child Studies Center of Yale University. Marc has extensively researched emotional intelligence as it relates to learning, decision-making, creativity, relationships, health, and performance. And he also leads an emotional intelligence development program, Ruler, which has been adopted by nearly 2,000 schools in K-12 education in the United States and beyond. So welcome, Marc.
Thank you for having me.
Marc, your impact can't be overstated, and your reach is global at this point. Can you just help us to just tell us briefly what is emotional intelligence, what it is not, and also why is it so important during this period of social isolation?
Gosh, that's a lot in one question. You guys are like tough cookies.
Take your time.
I have to remember what you asked. So, the way we see it in our center is emotional intelligence is how we reason with and about our feelings. More specifically, the model that I've been working on is Ruler, which is built upon the work of Peter Salovey and Jack Mayer. And Ruler stands for 5 key emotion skills: recognizing our own and other people's emotions, understanding the causes and consequences of those feelings. So what's the difference between anger and disappointment, or stressed and overwhelmed? Labeling those feelings with precise words. So getting granular about your feeling states. Are you irritated, or are you angry, or are you enraged? Are you pleased, happy, elated, or ecstatic? Expressing emotions, knowing how and when to express emotions with different people across contexts like culture. And then finally, the skills of emotion regulation. Those strategies that we use to help ourselves deal with life's ups and downs and viruses and systemic racism and fires, and the strategies that we help other people to manage their emotions.
Now, I had asked you earlier about is Ruler a tool for building character, et cetera, and you explained to me that I was really off the mark in that regard. So can you talk a little bit about what it is not? Yeah,
so we like to think of emotional intelligence as being strictly defined as how we reason with and about our feelings. So it's got to be about emotion-related concepts like emotion perception skills, like reading people's emotions. Are you interested in this conversation, or are you bored with me already? I know that's not the case, but you never know. When you are activated or triggered by someone, how do you manage that trigger, and how do you deactivate and problem solve? That's emotion skills. Now, there are related emotion skills like empathy. And people oftentimes confuse the two, and they're not unrelated, but they're just a little separate. So empathy is feeling what another person feels. So for example, I had a very tough childhood and felt a lot of shame. Maybe someone who's listening has had shame, and maybe for a different reason, but we can relate to each other because we both had that feeling of low self-worth and low self-esteem. That's empathy. It doesn't mean that I'm able to help that person manage. It doesn't mean that person is skilled at labeling their full range of emotions, right? It just means that we experience the same thing. Same thing like personality.
Doing research on emotions for more than 20 years myself, it took me about 10 years to decide to teach an emotional intelligence course, because for years, we didn't even know what the concept was. But thanks to you and other scholars, now we have a lot clearer view about emotional intelligence. Along those lines, though, I think one boundary that we need to create is the difference between emotional intelligence and cognitive intelligence, IQ, which has been researched for a lot longer time. And so we know that with IQ, people have a potential, let's say between 80 and 120, but then it depends on the education where you end up with in your life. Can you think about it, similar mechanisms for EQ, emotional intelligence? And if so, how can people build their emotional intelligence, considering that our educational system gives very little room for emotional intelligence development?
I think that firstly, they're just, we have one brain, right? And our cognition lives there, and our personality lives there, and our motivation lives there. And so does our emotional life. I think the difference between emotional intelligence and cognitive intelligence is that the emotion system is a hot system and the cognitive system is a cold system. So I always joke, like, life is good. You know, you have no problems, no trauma, you make a good living, you know, you're in a good relationship, everybody's healthy, you're on vacation. All right. So, like, I don't think I need emotional intelligence right now. But yet, all of a sudden, somebody kicks the sand in your face, and it's like, boom, all of a sudden, life changes, right? Like the coronavirus. You know, I think more people have realized how important emotional intelligence is because they're in a crisis mode, right? I've had fathers say to me, Mark, you know, like, I'm a father, I'm a lawyer, I'm now my son's co-teacher, I'm also the tech coordinator, I'm also the cafeteria, you know, person. I got all these roles, I can't take it anymore, like, give me strategies. And so to me, you know, that's an example of why we need emotional intelligence, right? Because all of a sudden you're activated, you are feeling things that you're not sure what they are, it's affecting your performance. Okay, now I need to be self-aware about my feeling states, and I need strategies to regulate them.
What I'm hearing is a lot of emphasis on like problem solving, just like math. You don't learn math until you start really solving the problems. But to be able to solve the problems, you need to learn the concepts, you need to learn the methods, and so forth. So maybe creating opportunities to rephrase emotional experiences as a problem, and then having a problem-solving approach. And along these lines, I want to add to the other question, which is there a way to move your ruler model from an individual level to a group level? Because a lot of problem creation, problem definition, and problem solving at the emotional level, I think it would be very hard for people, almost unfair to ask people to do that individually. You need support. You need other people, whether it be your family members, your peers, your coworkers. So can we use that ruler model at the group level so that we can create emotionally more intelligent families, emotionally more intelligent project teams, classrooms? Because we know that there is a concept, what we call group level emotional intelligence. But can we use your model to polish up on that?
It's the only way to use our model, actually. And I learned that the hard way, because I only cared about kids when I started this work, because I was going to heal myself and all the middle schoolers who were bullied and hated life. And I tried that with my uncle, who was my hero, who was the person who taught me all about emotional intelligence before it was even defined, because he was writing a curriculum back in the 1970s for children to learn about these skills. And I thought everybody was like my Uncle Marvin, you know, and I realized quickly that not the case. And so then we realized, well, we got to train the adults to be better role models for kids. And that worked a little bit better. And then principals were like, gosh, these leaders, like, they're walking out of the room. Like, why aren't they listening to the training? Oh, because they don't think it's for them. They think it's for the teachers. Mm-hmm. And like, oh, we got to get the leaders. And then I was in New York City. I gave a talk at Columbia University, and the superintendent came up to me like, I want this in all my schools. And I was like, ugh. Like, how are we going to do that? I can't like run around with my little posters to every 1,800 schools across the 5 boroughs. And then I realized, like, these are complex systems with leaders and chancellors and school boards and unions. And quickly I realized that if everybody's not playing by the same emotional rules, right, we're not going to get the outcomes that we want. So right now, the model that we've created has kind of 4 parts to it. The first is you got to get everybody on the emotions matter bus. You got to believe in your heart of hearts that emotions matter. You got to give yourself, you got to give everybody you know the permission to feel all their feelings. No bad or good emotions. They're just experiences. Open ourselves up to them all. The second is that everybody's got to work on the skills. You got to build your skills, and you got to realize it's life's work. The third is that you got to focus on the climate. You can't just focus on the individual or the teacher or the classroom. It's got to be a whole school, a whole family, a whole organizational approach. Because think about it, for kids, if they go to one classroom where the teacher talks about feelings, but then 5 others don't, what's the goal? How does that happen in terms of supporting children? And then finally, I think we have to look at policies like suspensions in schools and bullying policies, policies around professional development. Because if it's
And
not
also in work
permanent
environments,
part-
I would like to add, because it's not only kids, adults can be a lot harsher on each other, especially in work environments.
It's the same process in an organization. It's just exactly the same thing. I found no differences, except that you just have to change the examples.
And I'm so glad that now that everybody's turning to emotional intelligence now, because everybody needs it. Finally, people are aware of it.